Bindu appears across Hindu, Buddhist, and Tantric traditions as a point of extraordinary significance. It is often described as a seed, a spark, or a portal. What unites these traditions is the recognition that Bindu represents a threshold, the boundary where one mode of consciousness transitions into another. Consciousism offers a new interpretation of Bindu that integrates these ancient teachings with a modern metaphysical understanding. Bindu is neither simply a dot nor an ornament of symbolism. It is the outer edge of all dimensions and the interface between the absolute and the self. Reality can be visualized as a series of concentric spheres, like an onion composed of dimensions. At the center is the absolute, infinite, and undivided consciousness. Surrounding it are layer upon layer of dimensions, each a filtered or particularized expression of that absolute. The outermost layer of these dimensions is Bindu. Outside that Bindu layer exists the self, the localized observer navigating experience. In this framework, the self is not moving toward the absolute, but already exists outside the dimensional structure. The journey inward moves through dimensions toward the absolute at the center, and Bindu is the threshold between these two realities. Buddhist and Tantric traditions align with this geometric interpretation. In Tibetan Vajrayana and Dzogchen, Bindu is described as a luminous sphere, a point where the infinite radiance of mind becomes structured, the seed of manifestation, and the gateway between the unmanifest and the manifest mind. In Buddhist cosmology, Bindu resembles the interface between emptiness at the center and form outside. It is the pivot point where emptiness becomes observable reality. This maps precisely onto the dimensional model in Consciousism. Bindu functions as the outer rim of the Absolute's dimensional structure where the infinite compresses into the finite, the timeless becomes time, the formless becomes geometry, and the undifferentiated becomes the self. Bindu is the final membrane between the inner field of pure consciousness and the outer individuality that experiences separate existence. It is not the center, it is not the self, it is the threshold where one changes into the other. Physics reflects elements of this structure. Moving inward toward the center, dimensions compress, entropy decreases, and information density increases, resembling gravitational collapse toward a singularity, a transition from many dimensions to none. The onion-like layers resemble compactified dimensions in string theory, nested holographic surfaces, and quantum information layers. Each layer closer to the center is more fundamental, less filtered, and less fractured. Bindu itself behaves like a holographic boundary, a membrane where the Absolute's information condenses into the individual's reality. The self exists outside the dimensional stack. Localized consciousness is like an observer standing beyond all geometry, touching only the boundary. When awareness collapses inward toward Bindu, identity thins, perception shifts, dimensional awareness dissolves, and the Absolute is approached from the outside inward. Crossing Bindu does not raise consciousness upward, it pulls inward to the true origin. Transcendence is the inward journey through self, Bindu, dimensional layers, and finally absolute consciousness. When awareness touches Bindu, one experiences the void from the outside and the luminous seed from the inside. Crossing Bindu allows the dimensional layers to fall away until only the absolute remains. Bindu is the boundary of all dimensions, the interface where the absolute becomes the self, the membrane between infinite interior and finite exterior, the final threshold between pure being and experience. Across spiritual traditions it is called Bindu, Taigal, the clear light seed, the luminous drop, or the dermic pivot. In every case it is the same thing, the threshold where the absolute passes into the self and the self returns to the absolute.